I'm very pleased to have been asked to give a status update, really, a school report, if you like, on pharmacovigilance in 2018. And I will take you through that now. So I just wanted to start, and I'll end with the same slide, some headlines. And there's a little bit of overlap with some of the points Fergus made, but I make no apology for that. Firstly, pharmacovigilance in the European Union supports safe and effective use of medicines. And in addition to that, it supports patients getting new products by giving confidence to regulators, industry, and stakeholders that there will be planned and intensive follow-up of products once they get onto the market. As Fergus mentioned, EU pharmacovigilance legislation is now fully implemented, and that was particularly with the launch of the new U-Divigilance system in November last year. The U-Divigilance system has been demonstrated to detect safety issues earlier than just routine pharmacovigilance. We believe that the robust assessments conducted in the EU support rapid effective action being taken on safety issues. We believe we have delivered and wish through our discussions today to discuss perhaps even further enhanced engagement with the users of medicines. We wish to drive process improvement through regulatory science. We believe we have started to realize the potential of real-world evidence in terms of supporting decision-making. And we believe that the challenges we face are also opportunities. We think of new data and new technology being key challenges, but also making an impact through change to healthcare practice. So in this presentation, very quickly, I'm going to remind us of our shared objective, a quick focus on a few product benefit risk issues, on public engagement, on pharmacovigilance processes, on new data and science. Obviously, don't want to forget people, and then look to the future very briefly, perhaps as a scene setter for this afternoon's discussion on challenges and opportunities. So one slide on our shared objective. We believe our shared objective is to promote the health and well-being of EU citizens through the optimization of the safe and effective use of medicines. So fundamentally a public health goal. This objective is underpinned, or should be underpinned, by robust science, effective processes, and excellent people. And we've spent a lot of time trying to build that over recent years. We manage the benefit risk through the life cycle of products, starting well before a product goes on the market. And we believe that to really deliver this objective well, we need to go beyond the core of regulation in terms of authorization of medicines, collecting data on safety, in terms of bringing stakeholders together to allow the delivery of innovation. I suspect there are some people in the room that are relatively new to the EU pharmacovigilance system, and some of the things that you'll hear today will be perhaps complex and may seem impenetrable. I just give reference to a recent article that is both accurate and comprehensive in terms of explaining the European system. So some of you might like to have a look. Let's focus now on a few product benefit risk issues, and I take a few examples of benefit risk reviews at EU level. The one I wanted to start with, you may not think immediately as a pharmacovigilance issue, but actually it's a wonderful example of risk management. So planning the collection of benefit risk information before a product goes on the market. And these are the CAR T-cell products, Kymriah and Yescarta, which have been authorized for leukemia and lymphoma. These were supported during product development through the PRIME scheme, and that included intensive discussions and a workshop bringing stakeholders together to discuss the post-authorization monitoring, both of safety and efficacy, and particularly the contribution that registries can make. And here we have the European Bone Marrow Transplant Registry, which has delivered importantly for other products in terms of monitoring, and it is going to likely form a very key part of the monitoring of safety and efficacy of these CAR T-cell products. So an example of prospective pharmacovigilance, if you like, otherwise known as risk minimization, risk management. Now this slide looks a bit busy, but I wanted to put it on one slide because it is the 4 Dear Healthcare Professional letters which were agreed in the September PRAC meeting, PRAC Pharmacovigilance Risk Assessment Committee, the core of the European pharmacovigilance system. And it's quite unusual for one of the meetings to have 4 letters being agreed. And the reason I focus on these letters to healthcare professionals is this is where we think there's a really important issue that needs to be pushed out to the healthcare community rather than just updating product information. And if we start in the top left-hand side, sildenafil, Revatio, Viagra, the product names. The issue here is pulmonary hypertension and death in infants exposed in utero when the product is used in a clinical trial of growth retardation. This is an off-label use. The issue was notified to the EMA at the end of July with the trial being suspended, and at the beginning of September, the PRAC agrees a letter warning healthcare professionals not to use the product in this off-label indication. In a way, a similar story, rivaroxaban, Xarelto, so an anti-clotting medicine, which has demonstrated in a clinical trial to increase mortality, bleeding and clots in patients treated for a rather specialized indication of transcatheter aortic valve replacement. This is an off-label indication, but clearly the clinical trial demonstrated harm. This was notified to the EMA on the 13th of August. On the 14th of August, the EU Incident Management Network held a teleconference to discuss how to manage this emerging safety issue. And on the 5th of September, PRAC agreed a letter warning professionals not to use the product in this very specialist off-label indication. If you go to the bottom left-hand side, hydrochlorothiazide, rather different issue here. This is risk of lip and non-melanoma skin cancer. At the end of last year, 2 Danish epidemiological studies were published suggesting an association. In the beginning of this year, EMA conducted an in-house epidemiological study because it was felt important to test the strength of the evidence of a causal association. And in September, PRAC agreed a letter warning healthcare professionals. Basically, it's about avoiding sun exposure because the products seem to cause an increased sensitivity to sun exposure, which over time, and clearly these are long-term medicines, over time can then lead to an increased risk of cancer. Final example on this slide is fluoroquinolones. You'll be aware that we've had 2 parallel reviews going through the system, one on tendon rupture and neuropathy, which is still ongoing, and where we'll hear more in terms of the public hearing later on in the meeting. But the other review is on aortic aneurysm and dissection, which was concluded a few weeks ago at the Pharmacovigilance Risk Assessment Committee. Here we have epidemiological and non-clinical studies and evidence accumulating between 2015 and 2018 supporting a causal association. And in September, PRAC agreed that there was strong evidence of a causal association and that products should be labelled and warnings should be provided to healthcare professionals. So 4 benefit risk reviews from the last committee, which show different aspects of how we work, but I think all demonstrate robust assessment leading to timely regulatory action to protect public health. 2 more examples I want to give you. One is dolutegravir, Tivicay. This is a treatment for HIV infection, and the safety issue here is cases of neural tube defects from an observational study of use in Botswana. The product was being very extensively rolled out across the HIV patient population in Botswana, and an observational study showed a cluster of neural tube defects. This was reported to the European Medicines Agency by both the World Health Organization and the company on the 7th of May. On the 17th of May, the Pharmacovigilance Risk Assessment Committee agreed a letter warning healthcare professionals that women planning a pregnancy and women of childbearing potential should take special precautions. And a day later, so 24 hours after that, EMA, FDA and WHO coordinated press releases which all had consistent messages. So again, this was very much an international issue with most of the exposure and pregnancy going on outside the EU, and therefore the action that we took had implications for authorities outside the EU, which is why we were particularly driven to coordinate our messages with FDA and WHO. Last benefit risk example I'm going to give you is teclisumab beta Zinbrita. This is a relatively new treatment for multiple sclerosis, obviously a very important disease with high morbidity and also associated mortality. We started, the issue here is about encephalitis and death, and spontaneous reports started to accumulate at a neurology center in Germany. On the 20th of February, the EMA was informed by the Paul Ehrlich Institute. On the 23rd of February, the EU Incident Review Network teleconference recommended a referral to the Pharmacovigilance Risk Assessment Committee. And on the 1st of March, the company informed of its intention to withdraw the marketing authorizations. And 5 days after that, the PRAC concluded that the benefit risk was negative and there should be a suspension of the product with an immediate recall to pharmacy and hospital level, and also to send a letter out to healthcare professionals. So I hope you will see from this selection of benefit risk examples I've given you robust assessment, rapid action to protect public health. Quickly, and I won't spend too much time on public engagement because clearly it's going to be the focus of later presentations, but I just wanted to mention a few things. Now, this is a very busy slide. If I put to you that red is 2015 patient reporting by member state, blue is 2016, brown 17, and green 18. What you will see is between 2015 and 2017, in most member states, year on year, an increase in patient reporting, but nothing dramatic. But year on year, an increase, and then a big jump in 2018. These are predicted data for 18 based on the first 2 quarters. I don't think anything drastic has happened in society over the last 12 months. What this reflects is with the launch of the new Eurovision system in November 2017, the law changed on what companies need to send to the Eurovision system. And they needed to send all case reports, both serious and non-serious. Until November last year, the non-serious reports were not reported to the Eurovision system. So the reason I wanted to put this slide up in the context of engagement is that patient reporting is a relatively concrete measure of how much European patients are engaging with the pharmacovigilance system. And it does show an increase over time, but don't be fooled by the dramatic increase in 2018. That's because of a change in the reporting rules on industry. We're going to hear more about the public hearings, but clearly public hearings are a really important new tool for listening to the public. We also have very important dialogue with the industry. We have on Friday this week a dedicated meeting with the industry where we often go into the rather more technical aspects of pharmacovigilance, bearing in mind that industry is one of the core deliverers of pharmacovigilance in terms of tasks, studies, running pharmacovigilance systems, and so on. We also send out regular communications. This is a sort of newsletter that we send to the industry regularly, which updates on processes, guidelines, IT systems, etc. We're also trying to strengthen the scientific basis for how we engage with the public. And I won't go into the details of these papers. Some of it will probably come out in discussion and presentations later. But if you just look on the left-hand side, you'll see a study which looked at how specifically monitoring in real time different media for specific medicinal products, collecting that information and the messages coming from particularly patients could inform how we then communicated back to patients. And this holds promise, although quite resource intensive, but holds promise for better communication by regulators and perhaps industry in the future. Let's focus now on pharmacovigilance processes, and I'll go quite quickly, but just to remind us of some of the key processes and what we've been delivering. I mentioned the Eurovigilance system, so this was really important, and the new Eurovigilance system gave new data analytics tools to the regulators, to the industry, and far greater access and transparency to data to the general public. This paper, which is now quite old but remains absolutely valid, it's from 2010, demonstrated that if you use a big database like Eurovigilance to detect drug safety issues, more than half serious safety issues are detected earlier compared to not using a big database. So using just perhaps a national database together with periodic safety update reports, etc. And the earlier is significantly earlier. On average, it's about 2.5 years earlier you will get a signal coming through the Eurovigilance system. So Eurovigilance is really, really important in terms of rapidly detecting safety issues and taking rapid action to protect public health. So the bedrock of pharmacovigilance is Eurovigilance, and the bedrock activity is detecting drug safety signals. And what you'll see from this slide, if you look at 2018, the dotted line is predicted signals based on the first 2 quarters, and you'll see that we are anticipating a record year in 2018 in terms of number of signals detected. That's this slide actually showing number of discussions at the PRAC, but the dark blue bar, where you'll see about 50 signals in the first 2 quarters, if you then double that, you come up to about 100 signals, which will be a record year. We don't believe that's more unsafe products, We think that's year after year getting better at detecting drug safety signals within the European network and also within the industry. This slide is very similar to one shown last year, and the data are static in a way. It shows that these signals result in about half of them directly leading to product information updates. A little less than a quarter, further longer evaluation is required, perhaps an additional study is requested, or even a referral. And then in perhaps a third, we don't believe that the signal requires a product information update or any specific action, and routine monitoring is how the signal is followed up. Really important for the industry, in February this year, a pilot started where some companies for some products are required to analyze the data in Vigilance for signal detection purposes, in addition to what they're already doing to monitor the safety of their products. We have recently, in the last couple of weeks, announced to the industry that we're extending that pilot through 2019, and we will do a big review of the utility of the pilot and what went well and what didn't go so well during the course of 2019, so that in the autumn, in collaboration with the European Commission, we can make a decision about probably widening signal detection to all companies. But that widening of signal detection from Vigilance will be based on learnings from this pilot. Just to mention risk management planning, I mentioned it in the context of the CAR T cells, but risk management planning is the proactive planning bit of pharmacovigilance, and it is critical, and it should start before a product, well before a product goes on the market. What this slide shows is that levels of activity remain robust, if you like, with between 500 and 600 risk management plans being considered through the Pharmacovigilance Risk Assessment Committee in 2018. In terms of referrals, relatively modest levels of pharmacovigilance referrals. You'll see this slide shows 6 for 2018, quarter 1, quarter 2, which is a slight increase if you double that compared to 2016, 2017. But of course, these are the biggest and most complex benefit risk reviews, and this particular procedural route is reserved for those issues that are most complex, if you like. And certainly where we need the biggest level of patient engagement or stakeholder engagement, for example. I won't go through the next slide, but this is both the finalised and ongoing referrals in 2018 year to date, and you might want to have a look through for your interest later on. I just thought you'd be interested that we get a wide input from different delegations at the Pharmacovigilance Risk Assessment Committee. And interestingly, UK is still, these are cumulative data up to from 2012 to 2018, but 11 was rapporteur for 11 of the referrals to date. But you can also see that many different delegations across the union are contributing to the assessment capacity. Periodic safety update reports, just as a reminder, these are benefit risk assessments that can result in direct updates to product information. So the real novelty in public health terms of the new periodic safety update reports is they can lead to faster warnings to patients compared to the periodic safety update reports in the old legislation. 2018 predicted, based on the first 2 quarters, to be another record year with over 900 assessments going through the system, 900 assessments. And we're relatively constant in terms of the outcome, with about 20% leading directly to labelling changes. Post-authorization safety studies. This is a slightly complex slide with protocols on the left-hand side and results on the right-hand side. Aquamarine is non-imposed studies, and dark blue is imposed studies. Some people in the room will know what that means. And if you look at the 2018 data, they're just first 2 quarters, and what you're seeing is relatively constant numbers of imposed studies. This is where the regulators make the industry do the study, and increasing numbers of non-imposed studies. So this is where the companies are voluntarily doing a study. Bearing in mind again that the 2018 figures are first 2 quarters only, so your eyes need to double the height of that bar. So very quickly, focus on new data and new science, and then we'll be concluding. Within the European regulatory network, we don't just rely on academia and the industry. We also, when we feel there's a need for additional evidence to make an assessment of a safety issue or a benefit risk issue, we may do research either in-house or we may commission it from external contractors. In between 2013 and 2017, this is EMA only because some of the member states are also doing similar work. But in EMA, 46 studies were done in-house using the THIN database. This is a UK database of electronic health records. And 29 studies were done using IMS data, which is French and German data. Just a few examples: association between hydrochlorothiazide and skin cancer, fluoroquinolones and tendon rupture, antidepressant use in pregnancy, autumn spectrum disorder, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and psychiatric adverse events following levonorgestrel containing intrauterine devices. So just a few examples of the work that's going on. And this is real-world data work. Real-world data has become one of the buzzwords at the moment, together with big data. It's been going on within the European regulatory network since, well, for many years. And we intend to continue to use it and to strengthen it. In addition to the in-house work, we also have been funding and commissioning external research, again, where we believe that more evidence is needed on a potential causal association, for example. And I won't read through the slides, but in recent years, 15 major studies have been commissioned externally from academia into important drug safety issues. In addition to the specific studies, we've also been looking at what are the resources available in terms of real-world data and pharmacoepidemiology in the European Union. And this recent review of the EU healthcare databases, published in BMJ Open in 2018, concluded that only 13 member states have electronic healthcare databases considered suitable for regulatory decision-making. Now, if that's still 13 member states, that's extremely good and useful, and we try to make the most of the data that are available. But what it would imply is that there's really an opportunity working with the member states and working with healthcare providers to develop and get access to greater number of healthcare data sets for research that can support decision making. I'm pleased to announce that we've recently finalised some framework contracts at the European Medicines Agency which support greater use of real-world data in the future. And I'll spare you the details of this, but there's information on our website if you're interested. In terms of thinking perhaps slightly longer term, the question of a common data model for use of real-world data has been a hot debate, particularly in those working specifically in the area. And EMA engaged in that debate back in December last year by hosting a big public workshop where we brought experts from around the world, as well as some of the best experts in the European Union, to discuss the pros and cons of a common data model approach for accessing and analysing real-world data. And in the coming days, I believe, the report of that meeting will be made public. Now, if we think even bigger than real-world data, we would think of big data. And in terms of big data, back in November 2016, the HMA and EMA set up a joint big data task force to look at what is going on in the world, if you like, in terms of these different data sets. So this is real-world data, pharmacogenomics data, big pooled clinical trials sets, social media data, to name just four, but the list is quite long of potential data sources that would meet the definition of big data. And the report is currently being finalized, and I say watch this space because it should be made public before the end of the year and has important recommendations in terms of what we as regulators need to be aware of, where we need to focus our attention, where we may need to change, where we may need to invest. Just 2 slides on registries. We believe that patient registries are extremely important in terms of the monitoring of benefits and risks, particularly for hospital use, specialist use medicines. Over the last 12 months, we've held 4 disease area specific workshops in cystic fibrosis, multiple sclerosis, hematological malignancies in the context of the CAR T-cell therapies, and haemophilia, where we brought stakeholders together with registry owners to try and define core data elements and some governance principles that would allow the registry data to be more useful and more accessible for decision making. And the feedback we've had from those is that they are proving to be a very useful approach to facilitating the use of registries. In the coming days, we intend to publish a reflection paper which draws on a lot of the learnings from those workshops, and that will be open for public consultation for at least a 6-month period. So watch this space for that paper on our website. I won't go into any details, but after the H1N1 pandemic of 2009, one of the lessons learned was it was difficult and slow to set up post-authorization safety studies on vaccines in the European Union. And the Innovative Medicines Initiative funded a project called Advance, which has looked into solving that through governance, through technical platforms, and through collaboration and networking. And that project is coming to a close in the coming months, but a post-project platform called VAC4EU, or VAC4U, I think is how they prefer to pronounce it, will be launched in the coming months, and that hopes to deliver better studies and faster studies for vaccine benefit risk. And I think you should watch this space in terms of that platform. Last slide on the new science is coming back to our common purpose, which is to have an impact, a positive impact on healthcare delivery. And this study, which is quite interesting, is a systematic review and meta-analysis of methods in terms of measuring impact of pharmacovigilance. And this is an area where we want to find better methods as well as invest resources in terms of ensuring if there's a major public health action, we look to see what happens, either by getting the industry to do research, or in some cases to do research ourselves or commission research, but also to look to improve our business processes by studying how effective the processes are. So very quickly, not to forget people, Fergus mentioned Sabine Strauss and Martin Huber as the new PRAC chair and vice chair. We also have 6 new experts appointed by the European Commission who are listed on the slide. We continue to be supported by the patient reps Marco Greco, Albert van der Zijden, and by healthcare professional reps Raymond Anderson and Kirsten Meyer. And a great thanks to all those colleagues for their critical work on the risk assessment, Pharmacovigilance Risk Assessment Committee. Of course, that's all in addition to the members appointed by the member states. I also wanted to just briefly mention EndSet, European Network of Centres for Pharmacoepidemiology and Pharmacovigilance. It celebrated at the end of last year its 10th anniversary. This network brings together academics and service providers in pharmacovigilance and pharmacoepidemiology and aims to have better studies and therefore better monitoring of benefit risk of products through networking, transparency, independence, and standards. The network has more than 150 centres, more than 20 sub-networks within it, and more than 120 data sources. A really important resource for Europe. One slide on challenges and opportunities, and I think we'll hear more about this afternoon, I suspect, with the feedback from you. Realising the potential of real-world data to support decision-making and better public health is both a challenge and an opportunity in terms of new data sources, new technology, and new analytical approaches. We believe it is our duty, a collective duty, to strive for greater efficiency and effectiveness through evidence-based process improvements, and that evidence will often come from regulatory sciences. We believe we should always strive for better engagement with the public, and finally, we should always strive to have a greater and better impact in terms of changing healthcare delivery for better public health. So I finish with the headlines with which I started. EU pharmacovigilance supports safe and effective use of medicines and supports patients getting new products. The EU pharmacovigilance legislation is fully implemented, and particularly the launch of the new EU vigilance system at the end of last year was the last piece of the jigsaw puzzle. Robust assessment in the European Union supports rapid action on safety issues. We are investing in enhanced engagement with users of medicines. We're driving process improvement through regulatory science. We're starting to realise the potential of real-world evidence, and we, with you, wish to rise to the challenge of new data and new technology and making an impact through a change in healthcare practice. With that, I thank you for listening.